This is the only part of this video I can show you, as the rest was way too graphic for YouTube. But it shows a Mexican hitman getting murdered with his own custom-made gun, and while his death was a humiliating act for his gang, the reason behind it was just as foolish as that hitman himself. Let's take a look at some wannabe gangsters who messed with the wrong cartels.
The FBI is on the case of a missing Texas man they say bragged about stealing thousands of dollars from a Mexican cartel and then disappeared just 2 hours later.
At 11 p.m. on March 23, 2023, Eric Tadeo Ramirez showed up to a party at a house on the 3400 block of Cartel Loop in the Las Americas neighborhood of South Laredo, Texas. And while at this party, Eric did what only a person with half a brain would do. He got on the phone with a woman and boldly bragged about stealing $50,000 from one of Mexico's most dangerous cartels. To make matters worse, he told her exactly where he was, confidently claiming that the cartel couldn't touch him because he was in the US and had a green card. Now, what Eric didn't realize was that the woman on the other end of that line wasn't just anyone. She was part of the very cartel he had crossed, and with this location secured, it took just 2 hours for sicarios from that Mexican cartel to cross into the US and send Eric a brutal message. Being a loudmouth degenerate comes at a steep price. But before I go into the shocking details of what Eric endured after falling into the hands of this cartel, you need to understand who he was up against. Now, he had crossed Cartel del Noreste, or Northeast Cartel, an offshoot of the notoriously violent Los Zetas. And if none of those names send shivers down your spine, then allow us to educate you.
Yo creo que la violencia no se va a acabar. Porque tenemos que imponer el terreno a nosotros, pues.
On March 16, 2023, a pastor arrives at a migrant shelter in Nuevo Laredo, and as he walked through the bustling space, his phone began to ring, pulling his attention away. So he picks it up, but as soon as he does, a deep sigh escapes him, as it was yet another threat from the Northeast Cartel, aka the CDN. Now, threats from this cartel had become an unfortunate part of his life. This cartel controls Nuevo Laredo, a gritty industrial city near the US-Mexican border in northern Tamaulipas. For the pastor, these menacing messages were painful, but no longer surprising. He wasn't alone in this struggle. Directors of nearly every migrant shelter in the city endured the same intimidation. The Northeast Cartel ruled with an iron fist, facing little resistance from rivals or even local authorities, who often turned a blind eye, or worse, cooperated. Their audacity knew no bounds, with advocates for migrants occasionally kidnapped in broad daylight if they dared to disrupt cartel activities. The cartel's grip stretched far beyond the shelters. Along the Rio Grande, their paid lookouts watched every move on both sides of the border. Parks, plazas, and bus stations, anywhere migrants gathered, were under their surveillance. Even arrivals from the cities like Monterrey were scrutinized, ensuring the cartel maintained its stronghold on the vulnerable. But don't get it twisted, because the CDN stronghold in Nuevo Laredo wasn't random. It's deeply rooted in their long history and local connections. The CDN formed about a decade ago from the fractured remnants of the infamous Zetas cartel, which is also called Nuevo Laredo home. The Zetas crumbled after their high-profile leaders, Miguel Trevino Morales, aka Z40, and Omar Trevino Morales, Z42, were killed. Their downfall left a leadership crisis that split the group into two main factions, the Northeast Cartel and the old-school Zetas. In a fight for dominance, the Northeast Cartel managed to outmaneuver their enemies, including the Gulf Cartel and other Zetas factions, securing key territories like the Frontera Chica corridor to the east. But what sets the CDN apart is its tight-knit, family-driven leadership. Initially, Juan Francisco Trevino Chavez, a nephew of the Trevino brothers, led the group. But after his arrest in 2016, leadership passed to another family member, Juan Gerardo Trevino Chavez. This family-based structure, paired with their strong local networks, had really helped the cartel consolidate power and stay ahead of its competitors. But unlike larger cartels like the Sinaloa or CJ&G, which rely on partnerships with local gangs to expand into border cities like Ciudad Juarez and Tijuana, the Northeast Cartel operates independently. Now, their influence is impossible to miss in Nuevo Laredo. Laredo, where the city is covered with graffiti tags bearing CDN, a constant reminder of their grip on the region. The Northeast Cartel controls what goes and what doesn't. They would act as their own judges, settling everything from minor neighborhood squabbles to serious disputes. When needed, they handed out punishments, all while overseeing the flow of drugs, human trafficking, and other contraband through the busiest land crossing on the US-Mexico border. Breaking their rules can get you kidnapped or even killed if you cause enough trouble. And for Eric Ramirez, his actions earned him both. About 2 hours after making that phone call, a blue 4-door Dodge Ram pulls up to a spot on Querétaro. Out of that truck, 2 to 3 masked men armed with guns jump out and attack Eric. At a gunpoint, they force him back into the truck. The vehicle then goes toward Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas, Mexico, crossing the Juarez-Lincoln International Bridge. A chilling video from that incident showed a man, bloodied and desperate, trying to open the passenger door to escape while the truck was moving. But before he could get out, someone yanked him back inside. Back home, Eric's sister and girlfriend, worried after not hearing from him, reported him missing to the police. Witnesses in the area confirmed seeing 2 to 3 armed men abduct Eric. And acting on this information, FBI agents and task force officers conducted a knock and talk until they traced the truck used to abduct Eric. It belonged to the mother of a man named Jonathan Cabriales, as the truck was registered in her name. But it turns out that Cabriales was a member of the Northeast Cartel and was directly involved in Eric's abduction. Cabriales' mother revealed that she had gotten a call from his grandmother in Nuevo Laredo. The grandmother said Cabriales had been staying at her house. The truck was parked outside, and something about him was off. Cabriales was eventually detained by U.S. Customs and Border Protection as he tried to re-enter Laredo through the same Juarez-Lincoln International Bridge. So during questioning, Cabriales admitted to driving that Ram truck into Mexico in the early hours of March 24th, with Eric Ramirez in the vehicle. He'd also confessed that 3 others helped carry out that abduction. But here's the crazy part. Despite Cabriales being charged, Eric Ramirez remains missing to this day. Although it's been 14 years since his death, the legend of Jesus Gregorio, alias R5, refuses to fade from memory. Not for his bravery on the battlefield, but for his stupidity during his final days. As the former top leader of the Gente Nueva hitmen, his name resurfaced in a chilling video where hitmen working for Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, aka El Mencho, shot him dead using his own gun. Before that though, R5 was one of El Chapo's most trusted allies, running one of Chapo's most trusted hit squads. September 20th, 2011, a shocking scene unfolds in Veracruz, Mexico. During rush hour in the busy Boca del Rio area, gunmen stopped traffic and dumped 35 bodies on the street. Alongside the victims, 2 notes were left behind, claiming the dead bodies were members of the Zetas. The notes sent a bold message to the local community, urging them not to give in to extortion, the Zetas' notorious way of squeezing money from businesses and individuals. One of the notes read, "People of Veracruz, don't let yourself be extorted," while the other declared, "No more extortion, no more innocent deaths." The group behind the killings presented themselves as vigilantes, standing up against the horrors caused by the Zetas. They identified themselves as GN, or Gente Nueva. Now, Gente Nueva had made their presence known in Veracruz, often leaving messages with their victims. These messages painted them as defenders of justice against the Zetas. In 2007, a video surfaces showing the group interrogating and killing 2 men believed to be Zetas before dumping their bodies on the road. However, in 2008, Gente Nueva seemed to vanish from Veracruz, shifting their focus to Chihuahua, where they became deeply involved in the bloody cartel war around Ciudad Juarez. So as Gente Nueva's influence grew in Chihuahua, so did suspicion about who they really were. It was soon revealed that they were a covert faction of the Sinaloa cartel, the Zetas' main rival. Their tactics were brutal, so brutal that on October 9th, 2008, a hit squad storms the Rio Rosas bar in Chihuahua City, killing 11 people. The following year, Gente Nueva was linked to a series of massacres in Juarez, including the killing of 8 people at the 7 and 7 bar on August 17th, the execution of 20 people at the Casa Alviane drug rehab center on September 2nd, and on September 15th, an attack at another rehab center that left 10 people dead, including a doctor dead. And while their motives were often unclear, the evidence pointed to Gente Nueva in each case. So in Chihuahua, Gente Nueva carried out large-scale attacks, often traveling in convoys to destroy entire neighborhoods. Some of their recruits were even flown in from Sinaloa, ready to fight rival cartels like La Línea, Los Linces, and Barrio Azteca. However, their violence wasn't just limited to cartel members. Civilians would suffer as well, with extortions, robberies, kidnappings, and even drug violence becoming a constant threat. Now here's the twist. R5's decision to go rogue while leading the Gente Nueva was what eventually led to his downfall. Known for his ruthless leadership, R5 had the loyalty of his men, but his ambition grew beyond the orders of the Sinaloa cartel. At some points, R5 decided to take matters into his own hands, regardless of the manpower and resources it was costing the group. Fueled by personal vendettas and a desire for more control, he made the fateful choice to attack hitmen from the CJNG, one of the most dangerous and powerful cartels in Mexico. That move was a dangerous gamble. Going after the CJNG was an open declaration of war, and it wasn't something done lightly. The Sinaloa cartel has always been careful about the balance of power between cartels, and R5's actions were a clear defiance of that strategy. The Sinaloa cartel, despite its own brutal tactics, had always respected the need for a certain level of coordination, understanding that reckless moves could spark uncontrollable violence. But R5 was determined, and he underestimated the reach and retaliation of the CJNG. His attack on their sicarios was met with swift and brutal retribution, and in the end, it wasn't just the cartel that paid the price. R5 did as well. In a cruel twist of fate, R5 was captured and killed by the very forces he had tried to strike down. To add insult to injury, he was killed using his own gun. His death sent a chilling message, both to his men and other cartel leaders, that no one, not even the most powerful, is beyond the reach of the violent world they inhabit, and certainly not above the reach of El Mencho and the CJNG.
Ya lo andamos cerrando para nosotros. Esto es lo que quiero mostrar, lo que puede ser el dinero y el poder, o sea,
July 7th, 2022. A TikToker makes headlines by shutting down a bridge in Mexico using a trio of luxury cars, all just to film a video. Little did he know this stunt would provoke one of Mexico's most dangerous cartels, forever altering his life. Meet Rodolfo "Fofo" Marquez, a controversial Mexican influencer with millions of followers across his social media platforms. Born July 15th, 1997, Fofo clearly came into a privileged family. While details about that family are scarce, we do know that his grandfather crafted shoes for high-profile dignitaries in Mexico, and his father was a co-owner of Total gas station before he passed away. Now, Fofo's affluent background is evident in his social media persona, which revolve around flaunting luxurious cars, partying at upscale clubs with friends, and just living that dream life in Mexico. Now, that extravagant lifestyle would help him amass over 3 million followers on Instagram, making him a quintessential Gen Z influencer. But Instagram fame wasn't enough for Fofo. He ventured into TikTok, where he built an even larger fan base. However, with increased visibility came more scrutiny and enemies. Yet Fofo, fueled by his massive ego, felt invincible until he crossed paths with the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Guys, the CJNG has transformed into a global powerhouse, armed with military-grade equipment that rivals Mexican military units. Their reputation for brutality and dominance is well-earned, making them a force not to be trifled with. So, what exactly could someone so unimportant as Fofo Marquez have done to anger such a formidable and corrupt organization? Well, let me tell you, like many TikTokers aiming to entertain their followers with daily content, Fofo was no different. However, he decided to take his antics a step further with a stunt rarely seen in Mexico. On July 7th, 2022, Fofo commandeered 3 luxury cars and parked them right in the middle of the Matute Remus Bridge in Guadalajara. Stepping out of one of the cars, he starts filming the growing traffic jam behind him, boasting, "We have closed it for ourselves. This is what I want to demonstrate, what money and power can do. Literally, I closed it here because I wanted to. Illuminati. Fofo brags about how he halted traffic for several minutes, delighting in the honking cars behind him. At one point, he even contemplated doing TikTok dances while innocent people were just stuck on the bridge. The video posted on his TikTok page went quickly viral. The internet backlash was swift and severe. People were disgusted by Fofo's nonchalant and reckless behavior. Insults flew everywhere, with one Twitter user even calling him a headless imbecile. The mayor of Guadalajara wouldn't hold back either, threatening to press charges against Fofo. TikTok responded by banning his account and removing the controversial video, and within 48 hours, Fofo lost access to TikTok and had to turn to other social media platforms to issue an apology. He admitted to his childish behavior and sought forgiveness from those affected. The mayor accepted the apology, but mandated that Fofo complete several hours of community service, cleaning beneath the very bridge he had blocked. With no other choice, Fofo complied. But just as it seemed the ordeal was over, the CJNG decided to escalate matters. A message from the anonymous account named Gente con la Gente NG surfaced online, written in Spanish but roughly translating to, "Hello to all the people of Guadalajara. We are the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. As you might know, the influencer or scumbag Fofo Marquez dared to obstruct the flow of traffic on the Matute-Remos Bridge, which is an act that we do not tolerate. We will not allow this animal to get away with this. We are in charge of Jalisco and all of Mexico. We wouldn't allow you to come to Guadalajara and do this type of thing. If you ever step in Guadalajara, not you or your money would save you from us." For Fofo, that was a threat and a clear warning. Disrespecting the CJNG's authority was a grave insult, and Fofo knew that his wealth wouldn't shield him from their wrath. Terrified by the cartel's reputation, Fofo rushed back to Daddy's mansion, seeking refuge. The family quickly hires armed security guards to watch him around the clock. Despite those measures, Fofo wasn't safe. The CJNG has a track record of dismantling even the most formidable security forces, including elite cartel sicarios and battalions of the Mexican army. No amount of security could guarantee his safety, so living in constant fear, Fofo wouldn't leave his house for days on end. He avoided the windows to protect himself from potential sniper attacks, carried a transceiver to communicate in case of danger. For months, Fofo lived under this intense pressure, unable to return to his former carefree life. Eventually, he managed to get back to some semblance of normalcy, but the incident had left an indelible mark on his life. His reckless actions not only jeopardized his safety, but also showed him firsthand the unforgiving power of the CJNG. Fofo Marquez's story serves as a stark reminder that in Mexico, certain lines should never be crossed, especially when dealing with organizations as powerful and ruthless as the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. What started as a quest for online fame ended up being a life-altering ordeal, proving that some risks are simply not worth taking.
Mira bien, hijo de tu perra madre. A mí me pela la verga el mencho. Aquí si nomás se los digo puro 420. Yo no me duermo como el pirata o el chanito de Culiacán. Yo soy inmortal, yo soy intocable y yo soy un pato con el diablo, cabrón.
Pretty intense, right? Those fiery words came from a TikToker known by the handle Illuminati6. Before that account went private, he had a habit of entertaining followers by taking on their dares. So one day, a user dared him to insult none other than El Mencho, leader of the CJNG, and boy did he go all in. In the video, he casually leans against a light pole, dressed in this black round neck shirt, ripped black jeans, and a backpack. With a mix of bravado and recklessness, he declared, "Listen well, you son of a bitch. El Mencho can suck my dick." Then, as if doubling down, he added, "I don't sleep like El Pirata or El Chanito de Culiacán," referencing two social media teens who met a violent end, allegedly at El Mencho's hands. And to wrap it up, he confidently proclaimed, "I'm immortal, untouchable. I made a pact with the devil. Came to give you fire, Mencho. I'm not scared to say this. I'll say it with the camera right here. Mencho can suck my dick." You gotta admit, the audacity was jaw-dropping. When that clip spread like wildfire across Reddit and Twitter, reactions poured in. Some thought thought he must have been affiliated with a cartel to be so bold while showing his face. Others weren't as optimistic, with comments like, "RIP in advance, this guy's singing his death warrant," and "This is a tutorial on how to disappear." Surprisingly, there was no immediate response from El Mencho or the CJ&G. Rumors suggested that the teenager wasn't even in Mexico, making retaliation tricky. Now, reports claim that he lived in Richmond, California, which would complicate any attempt by the cartel to target him on U.S. soil. Then things took a wild turn. A few days later, the same TikToker posted an apology video, and it was a complete 180. His tone was remorseful, saying, "I'm sorry for what I said. I wasn't in my right mind. I wasn't thinking. It was wrong. That day I woke up stupid. I didn't consider the consequences. I did it for followers. I ask forgiveness. You and your family are well liked. Mencho, don't kill me. I have a family just like you. I apologize. We all make mistakes. I have psychological problems, sir. Please, remember, we like you." Naturally, the internet exploded. How could someone go from trash-talking Mencho to groveling for mercy in just a few days? Speculation ran wild. Did El Mencho send him a chilling private message? Or did reality finally sink in and he realized who he just insulted? Whatever happened behind the scenes, the TikToker disappeared shortly after. The account went private, and aside from a brief appearance in a video on another TikTok account weeks later, he seemed to vanish. So, what do you think? Did El Mencho quietly deal with him? Or did the TikToker simply lay low to escape the storm he created? We may never know. Now, we're not going to get twisted here. This ain't about LM1, but rather the wannabe gangsters who murdered his son. On April 18, 2008, in Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico, sicarios from a Mexican cartel ambush and kill 20-year-old Atanasio Torres Acosta, son of the famous Sinaloa cartel drug lord, LM1. And after his son died, LM1 lived for only one purpose: to exact revenge. February 28, 1958, LM1's born in Cosala, Sinaloa, Mexico, and shares familial ties with Javier Torres Felix, known as LJT. LJT maintained a close friendship and partnership with Ismael Zambada, a prominent figure in the Sinaloa cartel hierarchy. It's evident that LM1 grew up in this environment surrounded by firearms and narcotics due to that association. However, as he matured, he eventually entered the ranks of the Sinaloa cartel himself. During the 1990s, LM1 ascended through the cartel's ranks, but his true mettle was tested when his brother, Javier, faced arrest by Mexican authorities. On January 27, 2004, Javier was apprehended at his residence in San Miguel and subsequently extradited to the U.S., facing charges related to drug trafficking. With his brother's absence, LM1 was entrusted with a critical responsibility, overseeing the transportation of cocaine from South America into the Mexican states of Chiapas and Oaxaca. This role was of utmost significance, elevating his standing within the cartel. He would collaborate closely with El Chapo's son, Ovidio Guzman Lopez, solidifying his power within the organization. Nonetheless, prominence also made him a prime target for the Sinaloa cartel's arch rivals, the Beltran Leyva organization, or the BLO. These adversaries took the responsibility of transforming LM1 from a typical drug dealer into a ruthless, murderous figure. How do you ask? By killing his son during the BLO Sinaloa drug war. April 18, 2008, a dramatic incident unfolds at the Montebello residential district of Culiacan, right outside the health ministry. LM1's 20-year-old son, Torres Acosta, found himself in a dire situation when a group of sicarios working for the BLO launched a surprise attack. Torres wasn't alone. He was accompanied by his sister Alondra and LM1's sister-in-law, Rivas Heredia. The sicarios tried to kidnap Torres Acosta, but he resisted, making him open fire and killing him on the spot. The shots fired hit the girl on her right arm and shoulder, while LM1's sister-in-law got hit in the left leg. After the killing of Torres Acosta, police found the escape vehicle used by the sicarios, and inside that vehicle was the major thing that made LM1 lose his mind. On behalf of your friend and his nephews, Los Zetas, so you can understand, Manuel Torres. In the days that followed his son's tragic death, LM1 took a disturbing turn. He told his underlings to round up members of the BLO and Los Zetas, subjecting them to unimaginable torture at his ranch. It was during this period that the true extent of LM1's psychosis emerged. He subjected each captive to brutal torment before ultimately executing them in cold blood. One of his victims was the municipal police commander, Roberto Carlos Barcelo Villagran, who endured a gruesome ordeal. His back was mercilessly sliced with knives, his legs severed, and he was beheaded while he remained conscious, an appalling act that defies comprehension. His lifeless body, along with 2 others, was then disposed of in the trunk of a vehicle, while LM1 sicarios scattered the remains of other victims throughout Culiacan. And despite the initial carnage, the cycle of violence didn't abate with the deaths of a few individuals. In fact, with each act of retribution, LM1's emotional instability intensified. Additionally, the ongoing feud between the BLO and Sinaloa cartels had spiraled out of control, leading to further bloodshed. LM1's ruthless methods earned him the moniker El Ondeado, signifying his descent into madness. He claimed the lives of over 30 BLO cartel sicarios and ordered the deaths of hundreds more. The city of Culiacan became a nightmare, marked by blood-soaked streets and lifeless bodies at nearly every turn. In response, the Mexican government dispatched 2,000 troops in September 2008 to quell the violence. The operation, however, played a pivotal role in LM1's eventual downfall. September 2008, authorities raided one of LM1's safe houses, uncovering firearms, narcotics, and an armored vehicle. Most importantly, they found a picture with LM1 alongside Misael Torres Urea, also known as LM2. Misael Torres was LM1's nephew and the son of Javier Torres Felix. That incriminating image circulated widely in the media, further exposing LM1 to danger. By 2011, he officially found himself on the U.S. government's blacklist under the Foreign Narcotics Kingpin Designation Act. There were only 2 ways to exit this list: imprisonment or death. No middle ground. So at this juncture, one might expect LM1 to adopt a low profile. The man had already succumbed to a profound sense of apathy. He didn't give a damn about the U.S. government coming after him. And maybe, just maybe, his lack of care was what led to his death. October 13th, 2012, in Oso Viejo, Culiacan, Sinaloa, LM1 was in a convoy with his bodyguards when the Mexican federal forces stopped him on the road. They tried to escape. They were surrounded, and what LM1 and his men didn't know was that the Mexican military had figured out exactly where they were hiding a few days before. They had soldiers posted all around the city to make sure there was no way out. LM1 got out of his vehicle and tried to run to the hills, but he didn't get far. They shot and killed him before he could make it anywhere. And as a way to remember and honor his son, whom he had started all the violence for, LM1 was buried in a cemetery outside of Culiacan, where he was able to lay and rest with his son.